Hey, what's going on, guys? OJ back here with another video, and today we're going to be talking about some of the most fluky fighters in the UFC. Now, when I say fluky, I don't necessarily mean, oh, they just happen to win fights that they don't shouldn't have won in the first place. No, these guys kind of win in the most absurd way possible, and it's funny as hell because it doesn't happen a lot, but because it's these particular individuals, you're not exactly shocked per se. I'm gonna have a set of tiers for you guys, just going over some of the flukiest fighters in the UFC right now. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the video. Alright, the first fighter I have for you guys, Neil Magny. This guy's a forefather of the cockroach maxer. Alright. Now, when I say cockroach maxing, I don't just mean that they're winning fights in the most flukish way possible. These guys literally make it so that you never pick them to win fights because they're probably just gonna get their ass handed to them for the majority of the fight before finding a way to fluke a win. And Neil Magny has been making a career out of this in the welterweight division. He just did it last night against Jake Matthews, where Jake Matthews was kind of just ragdolling Neil Magny for like 12 minutes of their fight. And he's done this before in 2024 when he fought Mike Mallet, where Mike Mallet was chewing up Neil Magny's legs for like 14 minutes of their fight. Right? You're never picking Neil Magny to win a fight. You're never expecting Neil Magny to get a flukish flukester win out of nowhere. But this is what Neil Magny does. All right. Unless you just knock him out in the first round or just put him away or just fight like Ian Gary, where Ian Gary just basically chewed up Neil Magny's legs for like 15 minutes straight. Neil Magny, he will find a way to win in the third round after you just whoop his ass because I don't know, it's just very hard to put away Neil Magny, I guess. All right, Neil Magny. This is not necessarily me being disrespectful to him because I think it's actually funny the way he wins, and I gotta respect him for that. But I gotta call what how Neil Magny fights, and the way Neil Magny fights is basically cockroach maxing. But hey, that's kind of a good thing because it's very funny to watch at times. All right, now up next we got Roman Dolidze. Yeah, I'm gonna say that Roman Dolidze is a little bit of a button masher. Now, the reason I can't put him at the top of the tiers is because he has clear, decisive victories against mediocre competition, at least. Like when he fought Marvin Vettori, when he fought Anthony Smith. Like, these guys aren't good, but Roman Dolidze clearly beat them. But at the same time, Roman Dolidze has the flukish ability of just ending a fight out of nowhere. Like when he almost calf slicer Jack Hermanson and then proceeded to ground and pound TKO him when he fought Kevin Holland and then punctured one of Kevin Holland's ribs. When he fought, I don't know, practically anybody. Like even when he loses, like when he fought Nasruddin Imavov and was able to get a majority draw because he just kind of cockroach maxed and somehow survived the early onslaught of Nasruddin Imavov. I feel that Roman Dolidze, he's not good, but he has been able to clearly win some fights before. So it's very interesting to see how he's still in the rankings in the first place. Right? Like when he fought Anthony Hernandez or anybody good, like he will get his ass tuned up. But if you don't put him away, he'll somehow find a way to try and make a comeback. So Roman Dolidze, I don't think you're good, but you have the ability to fluke a win at times. So I'm gonna respect you and put you at the button masher tier. All right, now up next we got Michael Johnson, absolute parlay destroyer over here. Michael Johnson, simply put, you're never picking him to win fights. Like even during his prime when he was fighting Dustin Poirier, like how many people were realistically picking Michael Johnson to beat Dustin Poirier? But this is what Michael Johnson does. The second you pick against him, he'll probably come up with a victory. He's just done this against Daniel Zellhuber as a plus 500 underdog. But the second you actually think he's going to win the fight, Michael Johnson all of a sudden becomes absolutely terrible. Like he lost to Jamie Malarkey of all people, and you're just never confident in any sort of Michael Johnson bet. All right, Michael Johnson, simply put, do not gamble on this guy. He will destroy your parlay regardless, and no matter how the fight ends, you're just so shaky because Michael Johnson can just get knocked out in the last seconds of the fight, or he'll pull off a victory out of his ass in a matchup that should have no business of winning in the first place. All right, now up next we got Ryan Spann. I think Ryan Spann is a little bit of a fluky flukester. All right, Ryan Spann knocked out Dominic Reyes in the first round with a jab. Now you can talk about how Dominic Reyes basically has a glass jaw at this point, especially because of what happened yesterday, where Carlos Ulberg just knocked him out with a 1-2. But realistically, because Ryan Spann knocked Dominic Reyes out with a jab, Ryan Spann was looked at as they got like a real contender in the light heavyweight division. No, turns out he's awful. He then proceeded to lose to Anthony Smith. He lost to Nikita Krylov via submission. He lost to Bogdan Gushkov, who is good, but still, it's just the way Ryan Spann lost that fight. I think that Ryan Spann, unless you're like a fat blob with zero capabilities in the grappling, or you just happen to have a glass jaw, and then like Ryan Spann just puts on a jab in the first round for some reason, there's no possibility of picking Ryan Spann to win a fight. All right, Ryan Spann basically put, unless he has a clear skill advantage over you, he practically wins all of his fights via fluke. And I would pick Dominic Reyes to beat Ryan Spann if they ever fought again. So Ryan Spann, a little bit of a fluky flukester. It's just he's been losing too many fights though, which is why I'm gonna say that he's not near the top of the list. Up next we got Nasrat Haqparast. I think he's fluked a couple of fights recently. The fight with Jared Gordon where Nasrat Haqparast was getting his ass beat. Somehow Nasrat Haqparast won the fight. The fight where he fought Esteban Ribovic, where like again, Nasrat Haqparast was landing some shots early before Ribovic decided to beat his ass in the later rounds. I have no idea how Haqparast was able to win either of those two fights, right? Now, he has been able to clearly beat a lot of guys in the past, and he's actually very technically good, right? But as of recently, he's been kind of fluking a couple of fights, which is why I have to include him on this list. All right, now up next we got Paul Craig, all right? Prime time parlay destroyer because you're always picking Paul Craig to lose, but there is a 1 out of 10 chance where Paul Craig all of a sudden flukes a triangle submission, and there goes the next hyped up light heavyweight or middleweight prospect, all right? And that's the thing. Paul Craig is incapable of striking on the feet and damaging you. Paul Craig literally has no jaw, yet for some reason, fighters will still find ways to get submitted in the guard of Paul Craig from time to time. The only reason he's not in the cockroach maxer tier is because he has been losing a lot of fights recently, and he just retired after losing to Modestas Bukauskas. But primetime Paul Craig was able to fluke victories against top tier level competition in the light heavyweight division, and two of them were either former champions or just became champion. In the case of Magomed Ankalaev. All right, now moving on, we got Derek Lewis. I'm gonna say Derek Lewis is a primetime button masher. Like you kind of watch Derek Lewis and you understand he has like one punch KO ability, but sometimes he just doesn't use it. Sometimes he'll just do some weird shit like throwing flying knees out of nowhere, shooting takedowns, or even just just fighting at range like a kickboxer, right? Derek Lewis, it's just like sometimes he just doesn't feel like winning, and then sometimes he'll be like, "All right, let's just bang and swing and bang, and then pull off some fluke ass victory." Right? He kind of did this against Talisman Teixeira, where let's be real, no one's really picking Derek Lewis to win the fight, but he was able to win the fight. And even before then, when he fought Marcos Rogerio de Lima, where everyone was picking Marcos Rogerio de Lima, but then Derek Lewis somehow threw a flying knee in the first 15 seconds of the fight. So I don't know. Derek Lewis, a little bit of a button masher, but you kind of get it because he has always had the one punch knockout ability. It's just sometimes when you watch Derek Lewis, you're like, he has no business of winning this fight, yet somehow he was able to pull this off. All right, now up next we got Bobby Green. All right, he is kind of a fluky flukester. All right, he's been losing a lot of fights recently, which is why I dropped him significantly on this list. But Bobby Green has been able to fluke some fights from time to time. The most recent one I can recall is the fight with Grant Dawson, where Grant Dawson just got knocked out in 30 seconds of their fight by Bobby Green. And Bobby Green's never really been the guy to just knock out anybody with a one punch. Yet he was able to do it to Grant Dawson, a matchup where let's be honest, most people were picking Grant Dawson to kind of just ragdoll him over the course of 3 rounds. Bobby Green has the capabilities of just fluking a win out of nowhere, but as of recently, it has not been materializing because he's just been getting chinned a lot. Jalen Turner literally sent into the Shadow Realm, Paddy Pimblett choked him out, and then Mauricio Rufy got a spinning wheel kick over his dome right after. Right? Bobby Green, maybe he can fluke some fight against some random unk, but as of right now, I don't think he's gonna beat anybody who's like decent in the lightweight division, who the UFC sees as like a legitimate prospect. So Bobby Green, at one point he was a prime time parlay destroyer, but as of recently, kind of a little bit more of a fluky flukester now. All right, now up next we got Leon Edwards. You're not really picking Leon Edwards to win a fight, but he was able to get the championship belt somehow against Kamaru Usman. Right? Outside of the head kick, though, like you genuinely question how Leon Edwards became champion in the first place. But that's the only fight I can really recall Leon Edwards fluking. And Leon Edwards, again, he did beat Kamaru Usman in the rematch, so like you can't really call it that big of a fluke. So Leon Edwards, he's fluked a couple of fights, mainly just the championship fight against Usman. But outside of that, all right, he's kind of fought the way he has, which is just boring leg kick maxing at range and just not really pushing any action. So I'll say that Leon Edwards has some fluke capabilities in him. He just doesn't show it often in his fights. All right, now up next we got Marlon Chito Vera. This guy is, I would say, is a primetime parlay destroyer. All right, Marlon Vera. What does he do? He just kind of marauds forward and then just let bantamweights beat up on his chin, and then find a way to just head kick people out of orbit in the later rounds. Like when he fought Dominic Cruz, who was coming off like a 3-year layoff. Right, Dominic Cruz was doing a very good job of just picking apart Cheeto Vera, and then all of a sudden, Cheeto Vera throws like a head kick out of nowhere, and then snipes Dominic Cruz's chin against Rob Font, where Rob Font was also piecing him up on the feet. Somehow, Marlon Cheeto Vera was able to find the knockdowns against Rob Font in order to secure himself the rounds. I think Marlon Vera, simply put, he is a prime example of a parlay destroyer. I would not be surprised if he beats like Eamon Zahabi next, because although Eamon Zahabi is pretty good, I don't see any sort of exceptional one shot capability. Nor do I see this extensive grappling game from him. So Cheeto Vera, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he just flukes a head kick over Eamon Zahabi head ki- uh after getting his ass beat for the first 2 rounds, because that's typically what Cheeto Vera does. And Cheeto Vera, he's kind of made a career out of doing this in order to find himself in the top 10 of the bantamweight division. All right, now up next we got Daniel Rodriguez. I think Daniel Rodriguez low key is a fluky flukester because I don't know. I just still question him being ranked in the first place. Like him beating Kevin Holland, I don't know how he pulled that off, but he was able to drop Kevin Holland multiple times. He was able to tank the shots of Kevin Holland, who hits pretty hard at 170, and he was able to survive a lot of the grappling transitions, despite being submitted by Neil Magny in the first 2 rounds. I think Daniel Rodriguez, right, he has the ability to fluke some fights, but hats off to him, I guess, because he's now on a three fight win streak, and he's in the welterweight rankings somehow. Right? Daniel Rodriguez, simply put, if he continues on doing this, I wouldn't be surprised if he somehow manages to find himself within like the top 8. I don't think he's gonna go farther than that, but Daniel Rodriguez, you never count him out because he has the fluke ability to just drop you out of nowhere after kind of getting picked apart, even by like low level competition like 38-year-old Santiago Ponzinibbio. All right, now up next we got Dricus Du Plessis. I think Dricus Du Plessis is a primetime button masher. Right, he has been able to win the belt. He has been able to defend the belt multiple times, which is why I'm not gonna say he's a parlay destroyer or a cockroach maxer. But Dricus Du Plessis, especially on the come up, has made an entire career out of just pulling victories out of his ass. Like when he fought Darren Till, when he fought Derek Brunson, when he fought Brad Tavares, right? He was having back and forth scraps with them, and in the third round, he was able to pull off a random submission or a random TKO out of nowhere. But then again, Dricus Du Plessis, he's actually very good, and it's been established he has heart. He has a lot of heart, which isn't something that other fighters really have. So it kind of makes sense. But still, if you just watch his fights, you just watch his technique and all that stuff, you can tell that Dricus Du Plessis is a primetime button masher and a little bit of a flukester when it comes to winning fights. All right, now up next, we're gonna go with Mateusz Gamrot. I think Mateusz Gamrot, a little bit of a fluky flukester, in my opinion. Like Mateusz Gamrot basically can have the ability to just win fights in the most ridiculous ways possible. Right, he blew out Rafael Fiziev's knee using telekinesis, and he was able to beat Arman Sarukian despite clearly losing like 3 rounds. And Mateusz Gamrot has the ability to fluke a win from time to time. Now he hasn't been able to show it recently, but I know the streets never forget. Like it wasn't that long ago where people were genuinely questioning how Mateusz Gamrot was ranked in the first place. People were saying that he lost to Jalen Turner, which I didn't think so, but he almost lost to RDA in the first round because RDA decided to throw a knee, and then Gamrot was like, "All right, bet," and then proceeded to just smudge him up against the canvas for 12 minutes. Mateusz Gamrot has the ability to fluke fights. I wouldn't be surprised if he beats Charles Oliveira via flukish stoppage. But yeah, if he does that to Charles Oliveira, I'm gonna say he's an absolute parlay destroyer. But for now, I'm gonna say he's a fluky flukester because he hasn't been able to show that ability as of recently. All right, now up next we got Mohamed Mokaev. Primetime Mohamed Mokaev. Watchers remember how much of a fluky flukester this guy is. This guy was basically the uh, flyweight version of Neil Magny, except he was considered a prospect. That's literally the only difference. All right, he gets his ass whooped for the first 2 rounds, and in the third round, he'll either latch up a submission or just hold a dominant position in order to win an uneventful 29-28 decision. Even if he's not supposed to win a fight, like when he fought Alex Perez, right? The judges got his back on that one. And it's not like the UFC really likes him in the first place, which is why I consider it a fluke. So Muhammad Mokaev, all right, like he's not in the UFC, unfortunately, but when Muhammad Mokaev fights in the UFC, you just know that some fluky flukester shit's gonna happen because that's just Muhammad Mokaev, right? All right, now up next we got Brian Ortega. I think Brian Ortega is a prime example of a cockroach maxer, right? What does Brian Ortega do? He just gets his ass whooped until the third round where he just latches up a submission out of nowhere. He did this against Renato Moicano. He did this against Yair Rodriguez after Rodriguez dropped him in the first 2 rounds. And he's been doing this every time he's been able to win fights, right? I don't think Brian Ortega is good. I think a lot of fighters have been able to figure him out as of right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if Brian Ortega, again, just gets his ass handed to him for the first 2 rounds, and then all of a sudden latches up a bullshit submission against someone who doesn't really have the best ground game out of nowhere, right? Brian Ortega can potentially submit Ilya Taporia out of nowhere, right? He'll get dropped in the first round, almost get knocked out, and then somehow Ilya Taporia will revive him with ground and pound shots. And then before long, you'll see Brian Ortega suddenly latching onto an armbar and then fluking the most flukish potential fight in UFC history, all right? Brian Ortega has the capabilities of doing so, which is why I say that Brian Ortega is cockroach maxing. And last but not least, we got Jiri Prochazka. I'm gonna say Jiri Prochazka is a prime button masher. You're never really confident in picking Jiri Prochazka to win a fight, right? Like if you are, you're basically just banking on the fact that he's gonna get whooped up for the first few rounds before just finding a way, using the holy martial arts spirit in order to guide himself to victory. Because outside of that, in terms of technique, in terms of just footwork and all that stuff, you're never picking Yuri Prohaska to win a fight. Like Rakic was able to piece him up for the majority of their fight before Yuri Prohaska just decided to lock in all of a sudden. Yuri Prohaska, unless he's fighting someone like pinpoint accurate and powerful like Alex Pereira, it's not out of the realm of possibility to say that he is able to fluke a lot of fights. And if he does potentially get the next title shot, I would not be shocked if he beats Magomed Ankalaev. I wouldn't necessarily pick him, but I wouldn't be shocked. Alright, that's gonna be it for today's video. If you guys want to see more videos like this, please make sure to like and subscribe so we can get this channel monetized. But other than that, though, I will probably have my UFC 320 predictions up sooner or later, so stay tuned for that. But otherwise, I will probably see you guys later. Peace.